This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
We Americans really don't have a clue when it comes to the situation Israelis are living under right now. First of all, we don't understand the size of the country. We're used to our major cities being 5 hours apart. That pretty much spans Dan to Beersheba, according to the Bible. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert, and these words are especially true right now as we're recording this, just to timestamp it, on Tuesday, September 24th, as Israel and Hezbollah are engaged in the largest exchange of missiles and projectiles across that northern border in 50 years or more. Joining us is somebody who's living under this threat. In fact, this morning before we recorded, he had to send me a note saying, in the shelter right now, we've got rockets and sirens going in the city. So we are thankful that he is safe and well, he and his family, and back able to speak to us today. He's senior reporter for one of the news sources that Sharon and I look at on a daily basis, Israel365news.com. He made Aliyah in 1991, served as a combat medic for the IDF. He's also studied Jewish law and received rabbinical ordination in Israel. He is an author. His most recent book, The Master of Return and the 11th Light, and you may have seen him in the docuseries Angels and Giants, produced by our good friend Rudy Landa and featuring our good friend Doug Van Dorn. It's an honor to welcome to the program for the first time Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. Adam, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it.
You're on the Golan Heights. Sharon and I have been there a few times. Whereabouts in the Golan are you?
I'm in a lovely little town called Ketzrin.
Oh, yeah.
It's considered the capital of the Golan. Anyone who comes up here will pass through for falafel or pizza.
And we did, in fact, when we were there last spring, we did a little excursion to the Golan. We visited Gilgal Rephaim with archaeologist Dr. Mike Freakman. And he spent a day there at Gilgal Rephaim and that Serpent Ridge, El Arba'in, I think they officially call it, which I know you've been to because I've seen the docuseries. So we passed through on our way back to our hotel in Tiberias.
In biblical terms, this is the area called the Bashan.
Yes.
It belongs to the tribe of Menashe. So.
Yes. And we've written rather extensively about Bashan. Our next book, The Gates of Hell, which is just coming out, focuses a lot on Bashan and the significance of all those megalithic structures there. But again, one of the things that really struck us as we've traveled around Israel is how small Israel is compared to the United States. We live in southwest Missouri in the Ozarks. It takes me 4.5, 5 hours to get up to St. Louis to visit our daughter. Born and raised in Chicago, and if you're going to go to, other than Milwaukee, which is only 90 miles away, if you're going to go to another major city like Indianapolis,
you should trade in your bicycle for an automobile.
Yeah, exactly. So we're used to things being far apart, but when you're on the Golan, for example, we've been to Mount Bental, and on a clear day you can see Damascus. So. It's hard for us to imagine how small Israel is, and in military terms, what that means for the people of Israel. What is that like, having to live knowing that your people who want you dead are just a few miles away?
Well, I don't understand why they want us dead. The Torah says choose life, and the fact is, they're doing more harm to themselves than to us. They're so intent on killing us and taking us out of the world that they're ruining their lives. It's something that I don't understand. It's not an impossible place to live, and we've actually made the desert bloom, and we've flourished here. I mean, Hamas got more money than it took to build Dubai. It's on the Mediterranean. It could be the Garden of Eden. It was the Garden of Eden when we had Gush Katif there. They're destroying their lives. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of not nice. Rockets, we hear the siren. Fortunately, we can shelter in our home, and we hear the booms. But, I go to the supermarket every Thursday to buy my food for Shabbat. And the shelves are relatively full. They're not full like they normally are, and the food is more expensive. But, I mean, those people who are attacking us, they don't have supermarkets. They don't have food. They don't have electricity. So, yeah, it's not nice. And I pray very much that they don't succeed in what they want. But they're hurting themselves so much more. I don't understand that. They're literally choosing death.
You make a really good point. Gaza has the climate of San Diego, which would be a garden spot. They could have taken the money, invested in underground tunnels in building.
It's the best beach in Israel.
Right. And it was gifted to them by Ariel Sharon back in 2005. So again, this mindset. As we were talking before recording, there are some books, and I'll link to these in the show notes so that people can read for themselves. The 14th century history of Islam's relations with the rest of the world. It is when people do things that are irrational, it's because of either a psychological or a spiritual cause. And again, with 14 centuries of this need to conquer the world, I would suggest it is spiritual. Since October 7th, which was the largest single-day loss of life in Israel's history to a terrorist attack, how have things changed for Israel as a whole and for you and your family, friends on the Golan in particular?
Well, there's good and bad. I mean, of course, the bad was all the people who died, and it was really a shock to our system. We got hit hard. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know someone who was killed. By the way, that's my phone, the alert that there's rockets falling. Clearly not for my city, or there would be right now an alarm. That's probably either Kiryat Shmona or Tzfat getting hit. Not so far away. We'll probably hear the rockets. So it was a shock to our system. It was a real body punch. And everyone felt it. And we're still in shock. And I never saw Israelis compare anything to the Holocaust until this came along. It's, I think, on that magnitude. And the after effects didn't help. The fact that we see so many, you would think something like that, people would reach out in kindness. But instead, people are choosing to side with evil. A lot of people, and it's very painful. That is very painful. The flip side is the difference between this and the Holocaust is we never had allies in the Holocaust. To see Christians reaching out to us and helping us that's never happened before, and not all Israelis are open to it. But the ones who are stunned. It's really wonderful. At first, it created great unity amongst the Israelis. That's kind of changing now. Tel Aviv exists in a bubble. I don't get them. I try to avoid Tel Aviv.
We've heard that from friends there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you've got Jerusalem, you've got all these other wonderful places. I don't have to go there. So they're starting to peel off. At first, there was a lot of unity, and that kind of ended. And I think this is driving a wedge between Israel and a lot of liberal American Jews. On a daily basis, it doesn't affect us so much until suddenly it does. Like, we live our lives, and then all of a sudden the siren goes off, and all of a sudden there are rockets, and you hear them, and it shakes the house, and there's really absolutely nothing you can do. I mean, it's a rocket and it's coming towards you and you don't see it. I was in the Army, but this is different. In the Army, you've got a gun and you can do something. This, you can't do anything. So 98% of the time, it doesn't really affect our lives. This week, we're not going out of the house unless we have to. We're not doing any extra trips, any shopping. My wife had to fix the car, and she really put it off until she couldn't anymore, and then she went out and fixed the car. So it is affecting us. And like I said, shopping, not everything is available. My son needed ear surgery, and it got put off for 8 months because the hospitals are focusing on the war. So it kind of affects us. But when it affects us, it's a big hit.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck us, we took a small group to Israel back in May, and we visited some of the communities in the south that were hit. We visited Ofakim. We went to the site of the Nova Music Festival, and the town of Sderot, which really struck me as we went to the overlook where we can look down into Gaza and realize that the border fence is just half a mile away. But going to a playground in Sderot and realizing that the playground equipment is made of 6-inch thick concrete so that when the sirens go off, the children can run inside the big green caterpillar or whatever and get away from rockets. Again, for us Americans who, even in our urban areas, I don't think people have that sense of insecurity. I mean, if you live in Chicago or San Francisco, there are certain neighborhoods you just avoid because they're not safe. But we don't have that same threat at any moment as with your phone just going off. That when that rings, or when you hear that alert or the siren or whatever, especially in a place like Sderot that's just half a mile from Gaza, or in some of the communities right on the Lebanese border, you may have less than a minute to get into a shelter. And
you're being very optimistic there. We don't have a minute to get to the shelter.
No, in Sderot, we were told it was 15 seconds.
Sderot, yes. Sderot, yes. We basically, the siren and my phone alert go off at the same time as the rockets start. Actually, today we had about 40 seconds before the rockets started exploding. It's okay if people don't understand it. I'm cool with that. I don't want people to understand it. Let them think that home is a beautiful place.
Would that it were. You talk about the political divide that is opened again. We saw this here in the U.S. after 9/11, where everybody was united and you saw flags waving from the car windows for a few weeks, and then things started to split as you started getting the finger pointing again. Benjamin Netanyahu has gotten a lot of blame for what happened on his watch. One of our friends who's very politically aware in Israel, Avi Lipkin, has told us that, we Americans have to understand that Israel is just as politically divided as the United States, that Israel has a deep state as well, and that Bibi may not know everything that is going on in his government. What is your sense there? I mean, who takes the blame for being caught off guard last October?
Everyone, all of them, everyone who has a function in the government. This is very similar to 73, where we got caught off guard, even though there were a lot of signs and we should have known it was coming. And after 73, it was the first time we had a right-wing government. Israel is very right-wing now. If you see, it's not really an equal divide. It's certainly not like an equal divide in America where you see the polls and it's like half Democrat, half Republican. It's pretty much 70-30, 80-20, with the majority being right-wing. As soon as the war calms down or gets to a manageable stage, it's generally known this is the way that Bibi is going to end his political career. I mean, thank you. I voted for him a couple times. He did an amazing job for some things, but you can't drop the ball like this. He's gone. Benny Gantz is gone. Anyone who had any silver on their shoulder and a green uniform is gone, and rightfully so. There have already been a few people who have resigned from the army very quietly. This is more than dropping the ball. This was bad. The government will change. I don't think you'll be seeing the same right-wing people we have right now, but the next government is going to definitely be more right-wing when we have elections, which I think will be sooner than expected. It's just, you can't do this in Israel.
Yeah.
Golda Meir, she got voted out of office because of 73.
Right.
That's what we're going to see.
It was, and this is one of the conspiracy theories that's been floated to explain the failing, because it is based on the faulty premise that the IDF and Mossad are all powerful And so they knew it was coming. They had to know it was coming. Bibi knew it was coming, and he let it happen so that he could do what he's doing in Gaza right now. And it just strikes me that Netanyahu is enough of a student of history to realize that this ended the careers not just of Golda Meir, but Moshe Dayan, who was the hero of 1967.
Yeah, sure. I think, I've heard the conspiracy theories, and like most conspiracy theories, there is a grain of truth. There was a lot of military intelligence, the higher level military intelligence, as well as tragically the spotters, I don't know what you call them, the lookouts, who were young women.
Yeah,
were reporting that there was things happening, and they were ignored. I think the problem is they got a little too fancy. The IDF has, there's two different armies. There's the guys with the yucky green uniforms that don't fit and who do the dirty work. And then there's the F-35s and the Iron Domes and the really fancy intelligence stuff. And they were emphasizing too much the fancy stuff. And they forgot that we're not fighting F-35s, we're fighting barbarians. And the hordes were at the gates, and the fancy people ignored it. So I think that's what happened. They ignored the on the ground facts, and you can't do that. You can't do that in Israel.
The intensity of the rocket exchanges and the airstrikes, the IDF on the one side, the rockets and drones coming over from Lebanon on the other. How does this compare to anything that you've seen since you arrived in Israel in 1991?
This is I've never seen anything like this. Not even similar. Even on October 7th. Well, I live in the Golan. I have a bomb shelter 30 meters to the left, 30 meters to the right. They were locked. They haven't been used in 30 years. And we've had, I think it's close to 9,000 rockets since October 7th.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Kiryat Shmona, 20, 30,000 people used to live there. It's a ghost town that's half destroyed. I don't know what they're going to do after the war with Kiryat Shmona. There's nothing that's even compares to this. And what's down south. There used to be State Road, one or two cities. It's decimated, and the problem is, a lot of people just don't want to go back. People from Kiryat Shmona, Kiryat Shmona's a lovely community. People know each other. People don't want to go back. State Road, I don't know how people stayed there. But a lot of the people on the Gaza border, a lot of those communities, it's done. People don't want to move back there. Oddly enough, if Israel decided to go back into Gaza, I know a lot of people who would move there. So
Gaza, sadly, is being turned back into a blank slate because of Hamas's insistence on using civilian infrastructure to house their rocket launching facilities and the tunnel networks that are based underneath.
Which they're also doing in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Straight up. They're launching cruise missiles from inside houses.
Right. The sad thing about the tunnel network in the north is that it's dug underneath the mountains, and the terrain is very much different than it is in Gaza.
That's an interesting question. I was, when the war started, I thought Gaza would be relatively easy. It's not a real country, and they're not a real army. So I thought the war in the south would be very quick. And then I was deeply concerned about the war in the north, and we knew that it would come up here once they finished down south. I think it's tragic that the war in Gaza went on so long. It didn't have to. It really didn't have to. And it led to more suffering for the Palestinians and more suffering for Israel. And a lot of soldiers did not have to die. They were playing politics while they were running a war. And you can't do that. So that war went on so quick. And after the beepers and all that, I kind of thought, hey, if I was Iranian, if I was in the Hezbollah, it'd be like, hey, let's take a break and come back in a couple of years. But they're not. So I thought it would be more difficult up here. Last week I thought it was almost over, and now I'm really not so sure. So
it seems to me that part of the issue in Gaza is that the Israeli military seems more concerned about preserving civilian lives than Hamas.
yeah,
That's the sad truth of the political situation around the world. As we saw this week, the United Nations pass a resolution essentially insisting that Israel withdraw to the pre-1967 borders, which is bizarre since the pre-67 borders, that area that the world calls the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, belonged to Jordan, which renounced its claim to that territory in 1988. So we're going to give it to who?
I mean, I guess it depends how you define the United Nations. You know, UNRWA was never, I mean, they called themselves humanitarian, but if you look at what they do, if you look at the rules they set up, if you look at the way they operated, there was nothing humanitarian about them. If they were so humanitarian and they got so much money, the Palestinians in Gaza wouldn't have needed any humanitarian assistance. There was already an existing organization that claimed to be humanitarian. The United Nations, and what do they call, it's so funny. It's like the terms are, you know, it's like as soon as Israel starts killing terrorists, that's an escalation. Excuse me? You know, them shooting rockets in terrorist cities is not an escalation. Killing terrorists who are armed and trying to kill Jews, that's an escalation. The United Nations, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I used to go around with the UNICEF boxes collecting on Halloween.
Right.
And I thought that the UN was the moral compass of the world, and it is so not. And when you realize that, none of their actions were really surprising. They're geared towards destroying Israel. UNRWA, most especially, is geared towards perpetuating the conflict and making it worse. So when you realize that, okay, let them say what they want. We know what they mean. You know?
Yeah. No, when I saw that story out, I just my comment on X was simply, well, that's not going to happen. And neither will Israel give back the Golan Heights, because when you go there and just look, and I'm not a military guy, but you don't have to be to see, okay, having the elevated high ground there just to launch mortars into Tiberias or any place along the Sea of Galilee. That's Israel just cannot allow that. So that's just not going to happen.
Derek, if I can say one thing, I'd like to think that one of the reasons that you read my articles is that I try to see things from a biblical prophetic perspective.
Right.
And it's all written in black and white. You know, Hashem brought us back to Israel, and we're not going to be destroyed, conquered again.
Well, that
Hashem
actually,
says so, you know,
that actually leads to a comment. Something that I just realized within the past year, and I can't remember where I saw this. It's not original to me. Most of my thoughts are not really original, just trying to put pieces together from actual scholars. But when we read in the book of Joshua, his summary of the conquest of Canaan, Joshua 11, beginning at verse 21, we see it was in the hill country of Judah and the hill country of Israel. And he drove the Anakim out of those areas, and only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did some remain, which, of course, those were the Philistine giants that David and his men had to deal with 400 years later. But the hill country of Judah and Israel is essentially what the world calls the West Bank. And that's what the world is insisting that Israel give back. It's almost like the war of conquest from 1400 BC is still in play, and we're still fighting the spirits of these giants.
I think that's precisely what's happening, and the thing is, the world wants to go back to that. The world wants to go back to before. Forget about before 67, before 1967. They want to go back to before the Jews came into the land of Israel under Joshua. That's what they want. They want the world to be the center of the world, the focus of the world, to be Canaanites and worshiping Baal. That's what they want. They just don't want us here.
No, absolutely. That's one of the things that we've concluded. There was a really insightful article published in the 1930s by a scholar named Charles Torrey, who said the origin of the word transliterated by John in the book of Revelation as Armageddon is not Har Megiddo, because there is no mountain at Megiddo. You know, it's in a valley. It's Har Moed, which means Mount of Assembly or Mount of the Congregation, from Isaiah chapter 14. The divine rebel who's thrown out of Eden wanted to establish his Har Moed in the Yarkate Tzefon, the far reaches of the north, the heights of the north, because mountains were where the gods met. It was the sort of Mount Olympus sort of thing, but Yarkate Tzefon refers to a mountain that we know of today. It's Jebel al-Akra in southern Turkey, near the ancient city of Antioch. But even closer, you've got Mount Hermon, which was the mountain of the Canaanite creator god El, or father god. But in terms of of Hashem, his Mount of Assembly is Zion. And we see references to this even in the Psalms, where, Psalm 48, where he compares Har Zion Yarkate Tzefon, which is usually rendered into English as Mount Zion in the far reaches of the north. It's like, no, he's comparing Mount Zion to Mount Tzefon, which was the mountain that was sacred to Baal. And so this is the conflict, the eternal conflict between the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the lesser Elohim who have rebelled against his authority. And the question is, whose Mount of Assembly or Mount of the Congregation will wind up controlling all of creation? So this is really about holy ground in a very real sense. And this is not something that most of us have been taught.
I have never learned it, so that's interesting for me. There you go.
We see it in Scripture where was it the servant of the Aramean king comes to be cured by the prophet Elisha, and he has him dip himself in the Jordan River, and he takes a cartload of earth back to Aram Damascus, because he understands that, okay, this ground is sacred to Hashem, and I need to take this with me because I'm going to serve him now that he's healed me. The concept of holy ground was well known in the ancient world, but as the Lord revealed through the Hebrew prophets and psalmists, here I will dwell, for I have desired it, referring to Zion. And the concept of holy mountains is was. You
see yourself as a Christian having a personal vested interest in what's going on in Israel right now? Absolutely.
And
it's not a given. I mean, there are a lot of Christians these days. It's interesting. There's a divide among Republicans, among Christians. And a lot of them are saying, what do we have to do with what the Jews are doing in Israel?
Absolutely. I mean, we see some megachurch pastors saying, hey, we don't need the Old Testament. We don't need the Tanakh. That's not relevant to us anymore. It's like, wait a minute.
Oh, my gosh.
When Sharon and I, we produce a weekly 30-minute television program called Unraveling Revelation. And rather than starting with Revelation chapter 1, we began with Genesis chapter 1 and went through Genesis 1 through 6, well, actually up through chapter 10 and the Babel incident, because unless you understand the rebellion of these lesser Elohim against their creator, you don't understand what's actually going on. I'm looking at my little notice here. I've got an app on my phone that beeps when it goes off too, but the last one I got was the one that sent you to the shelter an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, that was Spot that just got hit. They've been getting hit very hard, which is kind of a problem. They don't have enough shelters in the schools, and it's an old city. So when they built my city, Katsrin, they built it because we were on the Syrian border. They built it to be bomb shelters. My house is a bomb shelter, which makes putting up pictures and doing renovations very difficult. Here we go again, Kiryat Shmona. No, it's Spot. Sorry, Spot. So I actually shelter in my house because it's built like a bomb shelter. Tzfat is an ancient city. It's not, the houses shake apart, so it's a very different story.
Well, again, getting back to the idea that we Americans don't really have a sense of what this is like. When we were there last spring, we wanted to visit the nature reserve, the Ion Stream Nature Reserve up near Metula. So we went through Metula to get there. And our tour guide, Yashai Avatal.
You're not going there now.
No. And again, that's one of the things that had made this very real. We went through that community, and Yashai pointed out a white van on the other side of the little valley there, on the other side of the fence. He said, "You see that? Hezbollah." I'm like, what? No, it was United Nations. But again, that speaks to the... Yeah, exactly. What do they? What good are they? They're supposed to be keeping Hezbollah above the Litani River, which obviously has not happened.
Yeah.
But we went through this little community. But what struck me was not the fact that there was this community there that is surrounded on three sides by Lebanon, as much as it's a farming community, and all of the big farm equipment is inside the village, which is surrounded by a security wall. Whereas here in the United States, as you know, Adam, I mean, here in the American Midwest, you got a farm, and then a few miles down the road, you got another farm, and you got another farm, a few more, living openly, without walls, without fences, without guards at the gate, letting people in and out. We don't understand what it's like when you're living in a farm community to have to bring all of the equipment in from the fields and park it inside the town.
Not only that, if there's an alarm, on October 7th, there were a lot of Thailandia workers
Yes.
Murdered and taken captive, because we used to, employ Palestinians, and that's less desirable. So we were bringing in workers from Thailand, and they were tragically killed and murdered. There were stories of, we have workers come from the Philippines, mostly to take care of our elderly, mostly Philippine women who take care of the elderly. They have a cultural thing with that that's really, it's so touching to see. There were several stories how they refused, I'm going to cry, they refused to leave their I don't want to say patients, because I've seen them kissing their patients, kissing the people they're taking care of. It's a personal thing. There was one Philippine woman who paid money to the terrorists to say, please don't kill this woman. And they, thank God, listened to her. On Shabbos, there was a rocket that hit a dairy farm. I used to be a dairy farmer in Kibbutz Deliao, and killed a bunch of cows.
I saw that.
Yeah. And it's like, think about it. Just think about it. If you had to go now, where would you go? If you're out in the field, forget about it. If you're driving in your car, one of the first deaths that happened near Katsrin was about a mile from where I'm sitting. There was a couple driving in their car. The red alert I don't think the red alert even went off, but their car got hit by a rocket, a direct hit, which is crazy, and killed them. And after that, my wife, she kind of freaked out. She's like, we'd be driving along, and she's like, where would we go now? Where would we go now? And it's, one time my son got off the bus, and as he got off the bus, the alarm went off. And now, thank God, they put in one of those portable shelters. So there's a portable shelter at that. But it's like, think about it. Where you are sitting right now. Yeah. If you had less than 1 minute to shelter, could you? Where would you go?
We don't have any place that would be sufficient protection.
All day, every day. That's what we do.
Yep.
I was shopping in the supermarket, and the alarm went off. It was Thursday afternoon, and they have a shelter. So everyone started going towards the shelter. They left their carts, and I see this guy running outside. I'm like, what? He said, my kids are in the car. Oh. He had so I ran out with him to help him with his kids. And as we're taking his kids, they had a portable shelter out in the parking lot. I see at least 3 women with 2 little kids in each hand running towards the shelter. And I'm running around while the rockets are exploding, trying to help these women who are, and God bless them. It's really not so bad. It's just incredibly horrible. Most of the time it's really not bad. And then every once in a while, it's just, you're sitting in your house, the windows are shaking, and I look at my wife, and I'm supposed to be strong, and I'm not a weak guy, and I'm not usually scared. I used to be a biker in Manhattan, with a BMW, and I'm scared. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Getting back to the prophetic implications of this, how do you see what is happening, looking at this from a a biblical perspective?
We're going to win. I mean, God said it, and I trust him more than I trust just about anyone. Really, I mean, if you read the Bible, this is, it's predicted we would come back. And I think people today are a little spoiled. If you had said, 100 years ago, or even 80 years ago, or even like right after World War II, it was a miracle that the Jews even survived World War II. If you had said, oh, they're going to be running a country that will rule the region of the Middle East, and they'll be too strong, people would be like, "Are you nuts?" But Hashem said it, and we did it, and it's really just because we believe in life. Hashem said, "Do life," so we're like, okay. So yeah, I'm on one level, I'm not concerned. On the other level, we've got a lot of young Israelis becoming soldiers, and that's tragedy. There's so many better things that Israel has to offer the world, that the Jews have to offer the world. So to just be soldiers is kind of, I mean, even in, we're teaching the world about how to run war, like the Iron Dome. That's insane, but there's, the world can be doing so much better than it is. And we could be offering so much more to the world. So it's a pity. And we're supposed to. I mean, that is prophecy. We're supposed to offer, be a light unto the nations, and not, being a military power is not really a biblical goal.
No, but again, this is so irrational, and it's been happening again and again, and especially since, based on my research, really the last 100 years, with the rise of violent anti-Jewish sentiment in the Middle East. I mean, there's always been anti-Semitism throughout the world, but it just seems the last century it is switched into a whole nother gear. And what's going on now with the as you say, it's destroying the lives of the people of Gaza, who could have had a garden spot. Lebanon, which was once the jewel of the Middle East as well. I know quite a few American Lebanese people who emigrated over the last century because of the way it was being mismanaged by the French and the Syrians, and now the Iran-backed religious cult called Hezbollah. It is tragic, but it is, at the end of the day, it's a supernatural conflict.
We're so close to salvation. We're so close to really living the blessed life that Hashem wants from us to bring His light into the world. So, for example, we're talking about Lebanon. Lebanon used to be an amazing place. It was the Paris of the Middle East.
Right.
And they chose this. They have a huge natural gas deposit offshore that if they would stop fighting, if they would say, thank you, Hezbollah, but no thanks, since it's part of the government, if they could have a thriving economy. Gush Katif was exporting $80,000 a day of agricultural products. They had hotels. It's on the Mediterranean. They could be living the big life. Iran. Now here's the secret that I've been trying to push. There is a Christian revival going on in Iran.
We've heard that, yes.
A big one. I've spoken to, and the Iranian people love Israel. They love the Jews. They look to Cyrus, and they're not Arab.
Right,
and they're not.
Right.
And Cyrus, they look to Cyrus as like one of their greatest historical figures. It's a 3,000-year-old culture. And just as Cyrus helped build the second temple, I'm counting on Iran to help build the third temple. They're that close. The Iranian regime, the Islamist regime, is, if they didn't have the support of Obama, Biden, Harris, it would have fallen a long time ago, and Iran would be a Christian state and one of the best allies of Israel. But because Obama, Biden, Harris decided that they wanted to support Iran, we've got these problems.
Yeah. And I don't understand that. I mean, I don't understand the logic behind it.
But we're that close.
A friend of ours, Ali Siadatan, who was born in Iran prior to the Islamic Revolution, he's now in Toronto, and he is a Christian. His family fled the mullahs back in 1979, went to Paris and then Toronto. He pointed out that this is the first time in history. I mean, we Americans think Iran has always been antagonistic towards the West. Israel's the little Satan, America's great. This is the first time in history that Iran has been openly belligerent to Israel. And of course, that was prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39.
That's interesting.
So this may not be the Gog-Magog war. In fact, I don't think it is, but it certainly is interesting that we've reached that point where for the first time in history, Iran is openly warlike towards Israel.
I was 7 years old when the Iranian Revolution took place. And Iran was like more Western than Europe.
Yeah.
The universities were mostly women. The women, forget about the hijab. The women were, America was way behind when it came to women's rights. It was, most of the academics were women. It was a beautiful, beautiful country, an amazing culture. And they had a few problems here and there, but they were, in many ways, they were way better off than Europe or America. And the Iranian Revolution just took that out.
Made the mistake because Iran was still allowing exchange students to come to the United States when I was in college in the early 80s. And Mahmoud was a friend, but I made the mistake of confusing him with an Arab, and he made it very clear that Persians are not Arabs. I've only made that mistake once.
No. Iran is actually the source of the word Aryan.
Yes.
The Caucasus Mountains, the Caucasian Mountains, they're very and they have they speak Persian. They're very, very different. There was actually one of the reasons why the Abraham Accords came about is there was an oil pipeline from Eilat to Haifa. So all of the Iranian oil came around the Arabian Sea to Eilat, where it was piped to Haifa, offloaded to super tankers, and then it went to Europe. That was the Iranian oil. And and they saved also a lot of money from the not using the Suez Canal. And so the Abraham Accords, there is now they're building, and they might have already finished it, a pipeline directly from the UAE, United Arab Emirates, to Eilat. So the Arab oil countries can pipe their oil directly to Eilat, make a right turn, go up to Haifa, and never go through the Suez Canal, never go through the Strait of Hormuz. So it won't be threatened by Iran. And that was all because at one point, all of the Iranian oil came through Israel. We were that
so
alive.
Repurposing that pipeline, that's would be a good use for it. And we pray that the Abraham Accords. Pray that the Abraham Accords can be reinvigorated after the election this November.
God will.
Very quickly, because I know you write about archaeology from time to time. You recently posted an article about the bronze sword of Ramses the Great.
That was today. Sure.
There have been a number of very exciting archaeological finds in Israel just in the last few years. Mount Ebal, the Curse Tablet.
Dr.
Many others.
Stripling,
and we've become friends with Scott. We've been at the archaeology symposium that's held by the team led by Dr. Stephen Collins, who's been digging over at Tal El Hammam in Jordan for the last 20 years. For you personally, what has been the most exciting or important archaeological discovery in Israel?
I think you already mentioned it. The Curse Tablet from Mount Ebal, I think is incredible. It might actually have been from the days of Joshua ben Nun, but archaeologists, they don't jump to conclusions.
Right.
they stick to the very tiny facts that they have. Dr. Stripling especially, he's I really appreciate him. He's the warrior. There's a schism in the world of biblical archaeology or archaeology in Israel as to whether or not it's biblical. There were archaeologists who said that King David was fiction and never existed, and that's now been proven to be false. Proving the Bible. The Bible is true, and the Eval tablet it's a tiny little piece of metal, and it's proved to be hugely controversial. And the controversy, to be honest, is kind of stupid. Dr. Shippling is an amazing archaeologist. He knows what he found. He found it through wet sifting in an area that had already been dug. And I think it was Dr. Finkelstein who said, nothing to find here. And then Dr. Shippling said, I'm not so sure. And he went back. Dr. Shippling also, he is pulling up lots of proof. He's working in Shiloh now.
Yes.
He's pulling up proof that the tabernacle was there.
Yep.
Which is interesting. There's been a shift in the world of archaeology where they realize that we make an impression on the world we live in. But there's been this shift where they realize that in biblical times there were not skyscrapers, they were not building with metal and stone. So there may not be architectural remains and things of that sort. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen and it wasn't there. So more and more things they are finding. I think a non-archaeological story was the arrival of the red heifers. That is huge. And there are bigger things on the way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to ask about that and got under a number of different rabbit trails, which is kind of how my brain works. We Christians don't understand the red heifer ritual very well. And so there have been a lot of theories that have been thrown out there that this is going to happen, and when it happens, this is going to follow. And a lot of it seems to be based on conjecture and hearsay and somebody seeing something on the internet and assuming it's true and then just cutting and pasting it. If I understand correctly, as we first saw the story last July of 2023, we would just about now be at the time when the heifers would be of age. What is this about, and what is the significance for Jews in Israel?
So, it's a big thing, but it's not a big thing. The red heifer, you have to understand, we do the commandments, and we're not allowed to say this is a big one, this is a small one. They're all the same. So the red heifer is just another commandment. What it does do is it opens up possibilities of how we can perform the temple service today. To be honest, not only could we, but we are required to start the temple service already. And the only reason why the temple service is not happening is because of the Israeli government. By that I mean, the red heifer, of course, purifies Jews from ritual impurity given over by proximity to a dead body. But that is only required for, sacrifices that you choose to make, like sin offerings, Thanksgiving offerings, sacrifices that are time-bound and public sacrifices, we are required to bring even if we are ritually impure. Meaning even without the red heifer, as we are today in a state of impurity, we are required to bring the twice daily sacrifices, which are public sacrifices that are time-bound, and a few others, including the Passover offering, which is also considered a time-bound public sacrifice. So those would not be so much affected by the red heifer. And it would also enable us to handle things that have been sanctified, like for first fruits, which we would not be able to handle in a state of ritual impurity. that would have been enabled, but and it would not require access to the Temple Mount because the red heifer is not burned on the Temple Mount. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a picture of an altar that it was supposed to. You don't use an altar for the red heifer. There was a few videos that showed a picture of a white altar. It's actually a model altar that's set up in, I think, Kochav Yaakov, Kochav Shachar, overlooking the Dead Sea Valley, or the Jordan Valley. And they also, there's the thing that a lot of people didn't understand. Yes, the cows, the heifers have come of age, meaning in order to be kosher to be used, they had to be 2 years, I believe 2 years and 1 month, because younger than that is a calf, an eglah. So you wanted a para. A para is 2 years and 1 month, which if, as a dairy farmer, I can tell you that's when they can get impregnated and whatnot. So we had the cows. Interestingly enough, it was the farmer that provided it and the organization that provided it, thanks to Byron Stinson, were Christians, and the organization that brought it over was a cooperation of Christians and Jews together, which is, I think, fairly important. What a lot of people didn't understand, yes, they came of age, but there have only been 9 red heifers since Mount Sinai. Do the math. This would have been the 10th, and we do have a tradition that the 10th one is to purify the nation to usher in the Messiah. That being said, we don't do anything unless it's absolutely right. There are things where we have a concept of l'chatchila and b'diavad. L'chatchila is ideally. B'diavad is, well, if you don't have ideal, what do you do? So there is wiggle room. That being said, there is very, very little wiggle room when it comes to the red heifers. Everything has to be perfect. So if it's not perfect, even if it's time and even if we really want it, it's not going to happen. And that's where a lot of people made the mistake. They think you have the heifers. It's not just the heifers. You have to have a Kohen who is ritually pure and was not born in a hospital, because hospitals, you're in there with dead bodies.
Dead bodies, right.
Right, and never came in contact with the dead body. Also, preferably, I believe, not flying, because dead bodies are also transported in planes. So you can't be sure. Also, in order to get from the Temple Mount to the place where we burn it on the Mount of Olives, there has to be a boardwalk. And the boardwalk is so that he's raised up above where there might be dead bodies. And since the Mount of Olives is a cemetery, it's pretty important. And there's a way you can build it so it is what they call ma'ahal. It stops the impurity from spreading. So that has to be built as well. So you have to have the proper Kohen, which I've been told that they found. I didn't actually interview the young man. I've seen photos of him. But there's a lot of things that have to be in place. You have to have the proper clothing. That being said, once we do it, there's I think his name is Professor Amar Zohar. He actually did a test burning of a cow. And he did the math to figure out, it's a tiny bit of ash in a big barrel of water. And then you just take the hyssop and you sprinkle it. And one drop can purify a person. So he said, how much can one cow really purify? And it was like 20 million people or something.
Oh,
like
wow.
that.
Wow.
So, yeah, one cow would do it. One cow would totally do it. I should say, Christians do not get ritual impurity. So they would not need it. The flip side is they also don't impart ritual impurity. So things that Jews could not handle, they could be our emissary to help us bring about the temple by handling things that we can't handle, things that would get impurity. So there's a lot. We've been studying it for a long time. There's a lot to learn.
Well, I would imagine there's been a lot, and until the last 75 years or so, it would seem to, well, someday we'll get to this. And now, since 1948, it is a lot more, especially since 1967.
One more point, if I may. I said that we are required to bring the public time-bound sacrifices right now, but those are only relevant to Jews. There are a lot of sacrifices that non-Jews would bring, Thanksgiving sacrifices, things like that, where, you know, if you have a grandchild or something like that, and you're like, I want to bring a present to God, what you would have to do is give it to a Jew to take it up to the temple. You would go to Jerusalem, give it to a Jew, he would take it up to the temple, give it to the Kohen, and the Kohen would perform it. We can't do that until we have the red heifer. So the red heifer would permit Christians to bring their sacrifices to Mount Zion, something that they could not do in the absence of the red heifer.
Yeah, and we see in Zechariah 14 that a day is prophesied when that will happen. So,
I'm looking forward to it.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I got a lot of Christian friends who I'm going to be more than happy to help them out with that. So,
well, we and likewise we are looking forward to the day we can get back to Israel. We had planned on coming back in November, but I think between the security situation and the way the economy is looking, and maybe even potential unrest here in the U.S. with the upcoming election, there were a lot of people who were just afraid to travel in November, but we were looking forward to getting back over. But when we do, we will definitely look you up, because we have been to Israel 4 times, and every time we go, we feel that there is something special about the land, and we can clearly see it with the people who live there, that there is a connection to the land that does not exist for most of the rest of us wherever we live on planet Earth. There's just doesn't seem to be that same sort of connection, spiritual, emotional, whatever, to the place we live. I was born and raised in Chicago. I have no desire to go back there. My ancestors settled for a long, long time in the vicinity of Baltimore, Maryland. Have no desire to go there either. But Israel, yeah, I could see if that opportunity ever came up, I could certainly see spending a lot of time there.
Israel is straight up prophecy. I mean,
Yep.
I'm hoping people understand that if you had said to anyone 80 years ago that Israel would exist, and they would have thought you were crazy, absolutely insane. It breaks all the rules, it breaks all the logic. And it's you're walking around in streets that, Isaiah said, oh, kids are going to be playing in the streets and old people will sit there. Yes, we're looking at that. Was that Isaiah? I think it was Isaiah. I'm not very good at the prophets. And we're seeing the prophecy everywhere you go. It's just, you can't avoid it. And we're getting closer. When I started writing 8 years ago, everyone was like, oh, you're crazy. This has always happened. Oh, you're always talking about. And honestly, the thing that changed it was COVID. No one calls me crazy anymore, which I kind of miss. But no one calls me crazy anymore, because it's like, Gog and Magog, maybe. Third temple, red heifer. And by the way, there's more stories percolating that are even more amazing than the red heifer, that are relevant to bringing about the third temple. These are, you walk around the streets. If you're looking for the archaeology and where Jesus walked, it's here.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for the prophecy and what's happening and going to happen, going to continue happening, that's also here, if you keep your eyes open.
Yeah. No, some of our most treasured possessions now are little bits of pottery that we were able to take back from Shiloh. Our tour guide said, look, it's everywhere here. These little fragments, the archaeologists, they can't do anything with them, so feel free to take them.
When I built my house in Gush Etzion, the builder was like kicking pottery into, off to the side, because if they find out that you have archaeology on your building site, they shut it down. Right. So, and it happens a lot.
I'll tell you what, the story of Kfar Etzion, which we've been to 3 times now, and every time we go back, we're taking people through that to see that presentation. That was
I lived right next door to there. I lived in Bahrain.
Wow.
for about 15 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's an amazing story, and maybe we can talk about that on a future date. Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, senior reporter for Israel365news.com. Check the links in the notes below. And Adam, really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to doing this again.
Whoop, I got to go. I got to go.
God bless you.
Bye.
Be
Sorry.
safe. I would like to say that we had specifically arranged that so that the interview ended just as the sirens are going off, but no, that was real. Adam left the room, and as he said during the interview, less than a minute later, we were hearing explosions, or I was hearing explosions. Well, I'm sure he was hearing them as well, because he came back shortly thereafter and said that was close, but not real close. It wasn't a window rattler, which they have had. Again, for us Americans, this is just completely outside our frame of experience, at least when we're living at home here in the U.S. I'm discounting, of course, those who've served in the military and come under fire, but, this is not the kind of thing you expect to have happening at home. But that's the reality for Israelis, especially those living in the north under fire from Hezbollah this past week, as things have heated up between Israel and Hezbollah over the last week or so. So pray for the people of Israel, especially those in the north. I will say again that when we were back there in the spring on our solidarity mission, that every other guest in the hotel, except for our small group of 9 people, were refugees from communities along the Lebanese border. 60,000 people who've fled their homes, almost 30,000 in the city of Kiryat Shmona, and this is just not sustainable. Even if the security situation is restored in the north, the fact that it's taken 11 months to do it, as Adam said, how many of those people will ever return home again? We are watching the unfolding of Bible prophecy before our eyes. And even though some of us have studied this for years, the fact that it is happening in real time and that this is what it looks like catches, speaking for myself here, some of us by surprise. Oh, didn't realize that this is what this was going to look like. Well, Lord, give us strength. Coming up, a couple of conferences to tell you about. Sharon's Inspiring Women's webinar. She's part of one that is coming up in just a couple of weekends. Of course, Christmas in Branson. I'll be speaking at that. And what else? Oh, yeah, our new book, The Gates of Hell. Available now. Details straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues.
Our new book, The Gates of Hell, is available now, and we have a special offer on it at the Gilbert House store.
You're not going to find a deal like this anywhere else. You're going to get the book, which is a $21.95 value. You're going to get 3 DVDs.
More than 12 hours of video content, plus the book for just $45. That's half price.
That's half price because the whole package at retail is over $90.
The Gates of Hell tackles mysteries like where was Jesus baptized and why did he choose to get baptized in a place known as the Land of the Serpent?
Oh my goodness, you want this deal. This is the kind of thing that you can share with your friends, share with your pastor, read again, because trust me, the source information that Derek and I used for this, you're not going to find it anywhere else.
Right. It's not just an archaeological or historical curiosity. It is relevant to us today. Again, a special offer for the month of October only at gilberthouse.org/store.
Talking the walk every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at VFTB.net. Our other websites, gilberthouse.org. That is our main web hub. My personal site, DerekPGilbert.com. On social media, X, formerly Twitter, at View from Bunker, at Derek Gilbert, at @GilbertHouse_TV. We also got at PID Radio if you want to follow the releases there. We're also on Facebook, the View from the Bunker page there. Give us a thumbs up, a like if you would. And, of course, Truth Social, GabMeWe, and Threads. Well, Threads at Derek Gilbert, the others at Derek P. Gilbert. On YouTube, you'll find us at Gilbert House, at Gilbert House. Subscribe, share, hit that like button, and then please download our free mobile app, because that guarantees all of our content gets to your smartphone or tablet, bypassing the gatekeepers of big tech. Whenever we start talking about things that involve Israel, things get a little dicey, and other issues that caused Skywatch TV to get kicked out of their sandbox a few times now already. Surprising subject matter, but okay. When you're not paying to play, you sometimes got to deal with that. But with our app, the content is hosted by a Christian company and comes right to your smartphone or tablet, whether it's iOS, Android, or Amazon Kindle Fire. We've also got versions for your TV. If you've got a set-top box, Roku, Apple TV, now Amazon Fire Stick or Fire TV, also Google TV, Android TV. We've got apps for all of those. Just look for Gilbert House Ministries in there. Add that to your set-top box, and all of this video content, including the rebooted Bible's Greatest Mysteries, will be coming to you very, very soon from here in the barn. Quick story to share with you. This is just while the people of Israel are literally living under fire, especially in the north, but again, as far south as Nazareth, Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, the Jezreel Valley. I mean, this is going into what is now central Israel. It's reaching into Samaria for the first time. While they're dealing with very real life and death situations, here in the United States, our tax dollars at work in San Francisco, the police there are being asked to put on inflatable chicken suits to catch speeders. Seriously, I'll put a small picture up here of what I'm talking about. A San Francisco cop carrying a portable radar device, radar gun, and dressed as a big inflatable chicken, or looking like, it's like a Halloween costume, a kid riding on a chicken, looking to catch drivers speeding through crosswalks. Some drivers apparently don't care, and they just fail to yield the crosswalk to a giant inflatable chicken. I guess this is the idea. You can't miss the giant inflatable chicken. I noticed the tail is in rainbow colors, but it is San Francisco after all. Anyway, why the chicken suit? Captain Hurwitz telling Fox News, I don't want them to get run over. The costume's so bright. Like, how can you miss it? Okay, that's fine. And I can understand if the drivers aren't slowing down for somebody who's plainly visible, a bright yellow, orange, red, blue, green chicken, you really have a problem. You're really trying not to slow down for somebody in the crosswalk. But boy, this is like the fifth time in 6 months where San Francisco police officers have had to do this. They've had cops dressing up as unicorns or Big Bird at various intersections and looking to catch drivers refusing to slow down at the crosswalk. I mean, look, each operation catching 30 to 40 rule breakers. I guess if people realize that this is what's going on and they start slowing down at crosswalks, it's a good thing, but maybe prosecuting the shoplifting and the open-air drug markets in San Francisco would be a better use of the time of these officers. Just saying. Bless their pointy little heads. Well, Skywatch TV has got a virtual conference coming up. The theme is The Resurrection War. That is officially being announced this week. It's going to go live on November 30th. And you'll have 90 days access to presentations from the likes of, well, yours truly and Sharon. We will both be contributing presentations, but also Carl Gallups, Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, Doug Van Dorn, Dr. Judd Burton, Dr. Igal German, Dr. Mike Spalding, Dr. Doug Hamp will be joining us this time. Many others. You can find a list of speakers and reserve your spot at defenderconference.com. There is an early bird discount. It's $85 for the 90 days access, 24 presentations. An early bird discount through November 15th. And then, again, access, everything goes live at 12:01 a.m. Central Time on Saturday, November 30th, and 90 days access. If you sign up after November 30th, you'll still get 90 days. So 3 months access, regardless of when you sign up, and more information and a place to sign up at defenderconference.com. The Inspiring Women webinar coming up in just a couple of weeks from Hear the Watchmen, hearthewatchmen.com. Sharon contributing a presentation to that, along with our friends Vicki Joy Anderson, Heidi Begley, Tracy Tennant, Leslie Johnson, and others. This is October 4th through 6th. The video presentations will go live on those dates. On Sunday, October 6th, there'll be a live Q&A with the speakers. So if you want to ask questions of Sharon, well, this is your chance. You get to do it directly and in real time, October 6th. More information at hearthewatchmen.com, hearthewatchmen.com. Christmas in Branson. Join us for this. We will be there for the Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference along with Ellie Marzulli, Bill Salas, Ken Johnson, Billy Crone, Mondo Gonzalez, Doug Hershey, Josh Peck, Patrick Wood, Olivia Melnick, and many others. Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. Look forward to seeing Bob again. This will be at the Chateau on the Lake in Branson, December 5th through 8th of 2024. Now, the hotel itself is sold out, but Branson, being a vacation site, has lots of hotels, so you shouldn't have trouble finding a reasonably priced hotel room in the Branson area. But they've already got 900 people signed up for the conference itself. The hotel has been booked out for over a month now, and we are looking forward to seeing you there. The hotel is gorgeous, beautiful setting overlooking Table Rock Lake, but they do it up for Christmas. Skywatch TV had its Christmas party there a few years ago, so we can vouch for this. They even had a group dressed in Victorian costume singing carols in the lobby. So this will be a really cool setting for a prophecy conference. And of course, Branson itself at Christmas time is gorgeous. Silver Dollar City is just outside town there, and that is decorated for Christmas. So if you can spend a few days there, bring the family. This will be a great gathering. And again, just some wonderful, wonderful speakers talking about the blessed hope we have of his imminent return. Again, more information at prophecywatchers.com or BransonChristmasProphecyConference.com. That's ultimately the site where you will sign up. You can find out more at that link. Go to our website, gilberthouse.org. Go to the upcoming events tab on the website, or go to our mobile app and look at the calendar there. Follow the link from there. Next spring, we plan to be, God willing, in Israel. The Iron and Myth Tour of Israel, March 25th through April 3rd. Doug Van Dorn, Dr. Judd Burton, and Timothy Alberino joining us. Now, obviously, the security situation is paramount, so we are watching to see what happens there in the next few weeks, next couple of months. But as of now, that is still on. If you put down a deposit, and we have to change the dates, and you cannot accommodate the new dates, Lipkin Tours will refund your money. You will not be out or obligated anything. They are very honorable people, and we have been blessed to go to Israel with them 4 times now, so we can say this without any fear of being proved wrong. They've been extremely gracious to us, and we hope you join us. We pray that things will be peaceful enough that we can return and visit all of the sites that we want to see. Thank you for taking time to spend this hour or so with us. If you're watching, again, give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe, and then download our app. And if you're listening, whether it's at Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, wherever fine podcasts are sold, please subscribe. And if you can, give us a good review. We'd sure appreciate that. Our announcer is the inimitable D.C. Good. And A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And good night, Oliver, wherever you are. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is A View from the Bunker.